We're recording. Logan Christopher, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on.
So I first found out about you. It's been probably when I first started getting into kettlebells, probably almost 10 years ago, I guess,
Yeah.
something like that. And I saw you juggling kettlebells,
Mm-hmm.
and then I ended up getting your
Old
uh,
school.
yeah,
Nice.
getting that, and I thought it was really cool because there's a ton of content on it, and it wasn't like a lot of like razzle dazzle effects or anything. It was just a dude out there in the sand juggling kettlebells a bunch of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I found out that you had your RKC at the time, and then you had different certifications, but then you really started going like your own way, doing your own thing. So
Mm-hmm.
how did you get started with kettlebells, and what made you just kind of do your own thing after a while?
Well, I think part of it's I get bored easily. Really, my journey with fitness, I played football in high school, wasn't very good. We did some strength and conditioning there. I didn't really get much stronger or anything, a little bit, but I was going to the commercial gym and doing bodybuilding routines because that's all I thought that was out there, really. It wasn't until after high school I found out specifically it was Matt Fury and body weight exercises, doing Hindu push-ups and squats and everything. And I started to see actual results with those, and I started to go to, working more on pull-ups and handstand push-ups and stuff that to me was a lot of fun. And part of it was really seeing the results with that, because I started, rather than being this weak, scrawny guy, I could actually begin to do some things that not everyone could do. So I kind of fell in love with that. And then from bodyweight exercises, one of my friends picked up a kettlebell. I swung that around a few times. I was like, this is amazing too. So the bodyweight kind of led to the kettlebell. Then from the kettlebell, it was off into old-time strongman stuff. And that led me back to realize, like barbells and dumbbells are cool too. It's just really all in how you use them. So I just enjoyed doing all these different types of strength training. So while I was learning from different people, I was never about, I just want to learn this one system and go as deep as I can into this. I really like to pick up things from different places. And I feel that's part of my strength, what I'm good at. So even in fitness, I've studied neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis and brought that into this world, which very useful tools that most people aren't aware of. So it's for me, it's been about finding all these different things and having fun with it all and seeing what sort of synergy can come out of it.
Yeah, so you had your RKC, right? And did you get certified through Valerie Fedorenko also?
Yeah, I also did the AKC, the American Kettlebell Club, at the time. Because, it's just, I like kettlebells, so I wanted to learn these different ways of doing it. So there's the hard style, but also the Gervoy. And at the time, it was this whole big controversy in the kettlebell community going on about all that, and, people quitting organizations and starting new things. But really, it's just about, these are really kind of different applications, different ways of using a tool. It really depends on what you're going for. And there's value to both of them. There's no one right way of doing things. There's many different right ways. It really depends on what you're going for.
Yeah. I'm certified through Strong First, so I originally found out about kettlebells through the RKC book, and it just blew my mind. And like, these guys could snatch 53 pounds 100 times in 5 minutes. That's crazy. And then I became one of those guys that it's actually not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And
it is until it isn't, right?
It isn't. Yeah, exactly. Like once you hit it, it's like, okay, that's cool. And then
on to the next thing.
Yeah, and then but like your kettlebell, like juggling, like where did you find that?
It was really from Jeff Martone in the first place. He was one of the original RKC guys involved there, and I just saw a little bit. And to me, it just looked like a lot of fun to do. And getting into the old-time strongman stuff, which is as compared to the modern strongman, which is really competition-based and whatnot, the old-time strongman's performance-based. So you're looking at being able to display your strength across a to a crowd. So with the kettlebell juggling, you know, that is something that's flashy and you can do all these really cool things with it. So I just thought that looked really cool. I started trying it. And when I first went through the RKC, they split us up into groups, and I happened to be in Jeff Martone's group. So just seeing him do that live there, when I got back home, yeah, I was working on the basics, you know, dialing in that technique for the swings, the snatches, and everything. But I was also doing kettlebell juggling on the side. And I really enjoyed, because it's something that you can quickly gain skill in. It, like every single time you go out there and practice a little bit, you can learn one or more new tricks that you've never been able to do before. And really the combinations are endless.
Yeah. I was able to pick it up pretty quickly from your DVDs, which I've had those for several years. I don't even remember how long ago it was. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by it because they think they're going to drop it on their foot, or they're going to be, but I was training with like one guy, and he was studying to be a trainer, and he was, you know, pretty strong with barbells and stuff. And I was teaching about kettlebells and movement stuff. And then I had this workshop, and him and his wife came, and she didn't really work out, but what I was teaching was kettlebell juggling. And even though she didn't really do any of that before, she was doing all these tricks with it, forwards and helicopters, and he was not. He just she was doing like better than him right at first, even though he's, you know, 6'2", 250, muscly, and he was just like spinning it all around. So I think people can like look at it as, I mean, there are certainly hard tricks, but if you have like, especially like DVDs like yours, just kind of like break it down and just kind of like simplify it. And
yeah, it really isn't as difficult as many people think. I mean, I've taken people that have never swung a kettlebell before, and yeah, I give them the basics of the swings, but you know, you can just get into the flip right from there, because also there's people that'll see what I'm doing, they come over and they just try it themselves, and they've never touched a kettlebell before. So yeah, it can get very complex, but one of the reasons I like it is, well, there's lots of different reasons, but yeah, it's just so much fun. You can go out there and you're just practicing things, and you don't realize, oh, you've basically done hundreds of swings in a workout, because you've been focusing on what you can do with it, not so much like, oh, I have to go through 100 swings in this set, that sort of thing. But also it does have that hand-eye coordination. You know, it's working the mind, because you're having to constantly calculate where that kettlebell is going to be the whole time. So you get all these other benefits, which you're not necessarily going to be hitting with even normal kettlebell swings.
yeah, it does add a lot more fun to it, and you have to like concentrate more, I guess, which then, like you said, like after, you know, you can set the timer for however long that you want, and then it kind of goes by faster than if you're just like humping out some swings for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And I think you had you came out with I think this was that first one that you did, but then you came out with like another juggling DVD after that.
Yeah, I did the definitive guide to kettlebell juggling 2.0, and that one I didn't put in DVDs because by that time I had developed a lot more, and I think so that's all online right now. And I think there's like 10 hours worth of video there. It's really broken up into different modules and bite-sized chunks. But yeah, I covered like everything I could possibly ever want to come up with the kettlebell juggling, all different ways of training and whatnot. So yeah, it's a deep dive into the topic, but there's, like I said before, unlimited combinations and different sort of tricks you can do, you know, from those basic front flips to, you know, flipping it over your body, under your body, over the shoulder, adding movement while you're doing it. It can get very complicated and even more fun.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like people don't have to be like a certain level to. What kind of like drives me crazy about like some trainers, and there's probably a method, or a reason behind their method, but like they think like, oh, you have to study for a long time before you try this move or something like that. Where you seem to be more like you can do it right now. You give it a try, and you can do this. Well, it looks like super complicated, but you can do it now. So like when you're like teaching people, Because do you actively have clients, or are you putting most of your stuff like?
Most of my focus goes online right now, so through various things, but occasionally, not so much like I'm doing personal training with clients, but I'll do coaching clients here and there, whether in person or online. But yeah, I've definitely worked with many people over the years.
Yeah, I think like learning through guys like you would be, and I think I have a similar sort of style. It's like you don't have to like hold these people back. It's almost like their business plan of like, you're only allowed to do like these couple techniques, and you have to like graduate, and then I'll show you the next juggle.
Yeah. With kettlebell juggling, it's even more so than other things. Like, it's just amazing how quickly people can progress with the different moves. So a little while ago, I had just a few people come here for like a in-home workshop, and we did some kettlebell juggling among other things. One of the guys had done some kettlebell juggling before. The other two had never tried it at all. But we probably spent like a half hour out there, and even the brand new guys, like I had shown them, and they had successfully completed at least one rep in something like 10 different types of flips and catches and whatnot. Like, it's something that can really go very quickly, especially when you have someone pointing out, because the kettlebell juggling, it is really about the fine motor control, and small tweaks to it can turn a move that's like, I have no clue how to do this, into, oh, that's how you get it.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the mental strength. Well, I actually have like 4 of your products here. You're talking about like the mental training.
Mm-hmm.
I have just happen to have it right here. I got all your stuff before I.
Nice.
The mental muscle. My mom got me this one too. I asked her for like 2015, which I think it was pretty new at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you like describe like what is like? I've read the book, and I've actually applied it to my training. So can you talk about like what it is, like the power of the mind? So I think you have a very interesting take on how you can use your mind to gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everyone is aware that, our minds are very powerful. If you look at most sports, the top athletes in the game, there's all kinds of quotes like, the game is 90% mental, or stuff like you have to believe in yourself in order to be successful, which is true across all these different fields. The difficulty is that you hear these phrases, but no one really explains how to actually do it. So, how do you believe in yourself if you don't in the first place? How do you, work on that mental game in a way that is specific and actually yields results? So I have dove deep into the topic, like I was saying a little bit earlier, neuro-linguistic programming. That's a big foundational field for me, and where I learned a lot of this stuff, but also kind of a sister science, if you will, hypnosis involved in there. Those are 2 of the big skill sets or tools that I use for the mental training. And what these allow you to do is have very specific ways of working at. So, with physical exercise, with fitness, we're, doing sets and reps and time things so it's a very kind of concrete way of how you actually get something done. I just took that same idea with the mental training and applied it in there. So there's specific ways that you can visualize that not only will they help you to do the exercise or feel good about it, but as I've shown multiple times, is by tweaking how you visualize something. Like an easy example that most people can do, and it works, I'd say about 80% of the time, is to simply, as you visualize yourself doing an exercise, visualize it brighter. By turning up the brightness within your internal exercise, what it seems to do is it amps up the neurology. It accesses more of that nervous system energy, which can then be applied to the muscles, and many people will find instantly they become stronger in what they're trying to do. So that's a quick example, and it can go much deeper than that. There are more complex ways of using it that can deliver greater results. But similar sort of thing with hypnosis. You have a specific intent in mind. There's ways of, working with the hypnotist, or just learning self-hypnosis, which is something I'm a big advocate for. You can then focus your mind and begin to change internal beliefs and use visualization in this way, and anchoring, and all these different tools that allow you to get greater performance. So it's really just about bringing that power of the mind into specific formats and methods that can be used and really applied for actual results.
Right. So an example might be if I'm doing a deadlift or something like that, and I can like picture myself in my mind doing it, and you just literally mean like make it look literally brighter in my mind.
Yep.
And then that's going to activate more of the pathway, or
yeah, it's just kind of a theory as for how it works, but based on my experience, that seems to be what's occurring. So let me just ask you this, and anyone listening along can do it the same. So I ask you to visualize a deadlift. So the first thing that we'll showcase, everyone does this a little bit differently, but when you visualize yourself doing a deadlift, are you in your body, like looking down at the ground, seeing the bar, or are you outside, third person from yourself, seeing yourself out there?
You want me to answer you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you first mentioned it, I was like seeing myself at the gym. I could see my body. I wasn't looking. I could see the scene as
you're
if
a third person.
Looking. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people they'll snap back and forth between these two, but for most people they kind of have a default way. More often than not, they'll either be inside their body or they'll be outside their body. Now, there is no one right way to do this. There are benefits of being inside your body, and there's times when you want to use that, and there's benefits to being outside your body. As it stands right now with this example, it doesn't really matter. Either way, you can work on the brightness. So you literally imagine yourself doing the deadlift, and one way to make this work a little bit better is not just see everything brighten, but imagine as you're lifting the weight, so as you're pulling up on the deadlift, then bring the brightness up. So bring the brightness as you're doing the lifting, and that tends to bring these two together so that you have a feeling within your body. And you may even just visualizing it now, right? A lot of people, when they talk about visualization, one of the important things or ways you can tell if you're doing it right, like you can feel it within your body. You're not physically doing a deadlift now, but by visualizing it realistically, your body can't tell the difference. So the muscles, the nervous system's actually firing. So if we can feel it firing, you may be able to feel it fire more, as an example, by doing this brightness exercise at the same time.
Right. And so I'm not doing the deadlift now, but I was picturing myself and then turning it. I could see myself, and I'm turning it up. But I guess if I was actually doing the deadlift, so then I'm using the same technique but maybe instead of that, maybe I would see the bar and I would see my arms, or I would see like the wall, and just kind of like maybe see the arms out of like the bottom of my eye or something like that, or the bar. Like maybe I would see the plates in the periphery.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people are going to keep the neutral head when they're doing. So you can just imagine yourself doing the deadlift, and you'd have the same kind of focal point you would use in reality. One way I like to use this visualization, especially with more skill-based training. So let's go back to the kettlebell juggling before, right? So with the skill-based training, it has a very large nervous system component. I mean, that's what skill is. It's being able to manipulate with greater detail your nervous system to trigger your movements, that sort of thing. So another visualization exercise you can do is first see yourself from the outside completing the exercise. So doing that kettlebell flip, but this could very well equally apply to the deadlift. See yourself outside, then step into your body. So you go from third person and visualize it, then you become first person and visualize it once again. As I said before, there's not a right way or wrong way to do this. There's different benefits. So by doing both of them, you can get the benefits of each of these different types of associated and dissociated visualization.
And have you tested it out, like with yourself? What is better for you specifically?
There's not a general answer. It really kind of depends on the specific thing. And what I've found is, for most people, by being inside the body, that allows you to feel it a bit more, to be more connected to the kinesthetics of the movement if you're inside your body, because that's more we're not actually ever seeing from outside of our own eyes in the real world, right? So it helps to anchor that in. Where the third person tends to be more useful is if you are, for instance, if you are being judged for something like gymnastics, where there's that aesthetic component. By being outside of yourself, you can kind of see yourself, with that same sort of judging eye. Greg Louganis, one of the Olympic divers, he would imagine himself from like every point in the stands. He'd be able to see himself from the outside from all these different angles. And what that's doing is it's really kind of filling in the neurology, because you're accessing these different points of information, which allow you to internalize it much more.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I could see how it would help like filter out whatever else is going on. Like nothing. I work at like two different places. I train at a wilderness survival school and then like a personal training studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm at the studio, maybe somebody else is playing the music and I don't like it.
Yeah.
it's not I'd rather work out in silence or have like something else going on. But nothing against it's a cool place, but you know what I mean? Like that workout music stuff. I don't really like the workout music, but I was just thinking, if I'm using these techniques that you're talking about, and I'm spending my energy focused on this instead of like, oh my God, this song is horrible. I'm focusing on that. So maybe it, I guess by definition, by focusing in on this thing, I'm tuning out these other things that are distracting. Is that?
Yeah. So generally with visualization, like so far we've talked about the visual component, but also the kinesthetic, the feeling component of it as well. But the auditory is a very useful to think about as well. It's often left out. So a lot of people that are into fitness or exercise or whatnot, they tend to be the kinesthetics. You know, they like to move and do stuff. So that fits in, and then often there's the visual. So that comes in there. But the auditory is while it's often forgotten channel, it is very important, and that's why people listen to music during the thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole bunch of different things you could do. You could just, by focusing more of the attention visually or kinesthetically, your mind can only pay attention to so much stuff consciously at one time, right? So yeah, that the actual physical or external music would kind of fade into the background by bringing your concentration more on these other things. You could also just play music you like internally, like you've heard the songs before, you can just replicate it. And music is one of the things that people naturally use to control their state. And so much of our strength and performance is really state dependent, right? You know, when you're ready and you've warmed up and whatnot, you know, you can deadlift in the gym, but imagine yourself just getting woken up at midnight, and are you going to be able to deadlift as much? No, it's really depending on the state that you're in. So music is one of the ways of controlling this, though of course not the only one.
Yeah, and you're talking about you mentioned anchors.
Yep.
So can you explain what the anchor is? Yeah,
so an anchor is something that it really is about this state control that we were just talking about there. So in a state, for people that aren't familiar with that term, it's kind of, think of it as an attitude or an emotional state, right? But there's also that physical component of it. So the kind of general states we have are mad, happy, sad, those types of things. But there are much more nuanced states as well. So the state you want for a deadlift is not necessarily the same state that you want for kettlebell juggling. Right? There may be some similarities to them, but for a deadlift, like a lot of people get super psyched up, right? But other people will approach it in a relaxed way. So there isn't necessarily one state that's right. You got to find what works for you and play with it over time. So an anchor is a way, it's a method of triggering that state and bringing it about instantaneously. So we'll use music as an example, since we were just talking about that. A lot of people, for workouts, they'll use like heavy metal or rap or something that has a lot of energy to it, right? And there is the energy of the music, but if they've listened to the same songs again, they're also kind of reaccessing how they felt in the past based on that music, right? So something I actually do for my workouts, if I'm focusing on something for a specific amount of time, I will re-listen to the same album over and over again. Just because that helps to anchor that music towards the working out. And I try not to listen to that music outside of the gym. That it helps to anchor and access that clean state and keep that for the gym and not apply it elsewhere. Kind of funny story about that. For a long time, I was listening to a band called Sabaton and used one of their albums in this way. and I was working on some heavy rack pulls, so partial deadlifts, and I was handling over 1,000 pounds in doing that. So I worked up to that. And then I go and see this band live, and they're performing specifically one of the songs there, and I'm like, oh, I need to lift something heavy now. It's because the anchor was really strong from doing that over and over and over again.
Yeah. So like, you're listening to like heavy metal and something like aggressive? Is that what you personally like to listen to?
Yeah, I do like that music, but I don't always listen to that, and it kind of depends on what I'm working on. So for like body weight exercise, there are times I'll go through listening to music during my workouts and periods of time where I don't listen to anything. And it really is about accessing other states. Let me also mention that music is not the only way of anchoring states or using that. That's just one example. You can use visualization. You can use like physical gestures. There's other ways of bringing about this state change than just music. Music just happens to be a common one that people are using, whether they are aware of it or not.
Yeah, if I am going to listen to music, it's more like hippie music or even like Sanskrit mantras and stuff.
Yeah.
Even if I'm going to be doing something like juggling or something that's like physically aggressive, and it's like almost like I don't know if it's like Quentin Tarantino movies where there might be this scene of just blood and like this like scene of horror, but there's like soft classical music playing.
Yeah, right.
And it's like there's this mayhem and then just soft music. Like it doesn't seem like it goes together, but it does in a way. Because I think if I'm listening to heavy metal, I used to like heavy metal a lot when I was younger, and not so much now. So maybe like it would like agitate me. I'd like start to get frustrated because this song is on, but not like frustrated where I can like channel that into a heavier deadlift or something like that. So like when you're working with somebody and you're maybe like trying to teach them about the stuff, how do you go about like finding their right music for them? So would you suggest?
First, let me say I would advocate everyone listens to music, and I'd say most combine it with their workouts. I would say it's definitely good to spend some time not listening to anything. I think a lot of people, they're just kind of going through the motions with the workouts, and the music's there to help distract them and make it a little bit more enjoyable. But if you really want like focused concentration, then trying to limit those distractions. But there's also times to listen to music that you hate. For instance, I forget who said this, but someone that was competing, he liked going to the gym and hearing music that he hated because it would be practice for him and not being distracted by the outside things and being able to get into that zone, the state he needed in order to be able to do those sort of lifts. So once again, there's not any right answer to any of this. It's really about finding yourself and knowing yourself and being able to use that. So you use the different types of music that you like to help put you in that state, while other things would throw you out of it. So if there was a purpose like competition or something where you'd want to actually be training that kind of distractibility in order to be able to have better internal control of it, that'd be useful there. But I'd say as a whole, find the music that you like that helps you with whatever you happen to be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say like that there is no right answer, but this stuff actually works.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it almost.
There's no one answer.
Yeah.
There's right ways of doing things, and there's definitely wrong ways of doing things, but there's always multiplicity of each thing, right? So I can't say, oh, listen to this song and only this song, and all your workouts will be 110%, right? There's nothing like that. You have to find what works for you, and just because it works for you doesn't mean it works for another person. But understanding the structure behind it, like the stuff we're talking about, this universally applies. You just have to find the specific applications.
Yeah, and do you find, like I was just thinking of, so I teach kids classes and adults, and we'll do like animal movements and into like different hand balancing things, kind of like you'd see in a yoga class. And sometimes, like when I'm playing the music, I might play like Native American drumming kinds of stuff, or like, okay, now go with the rhythm, or even like if we're doing like maybe a kettlebell clean, squat, and press, do it at this rhythm, and people are like kind of like doing different stuff, like they're hearing the rhythm. But like, do you get into that too, where it's like I do it on this beat, or have you?
Yeah, I've certainly played around with that a little bit. Rhythm is a huge part of movement, and that's where sound and really movement come together. I mean, that's what dance is about and everything. So there's a lot to be played with in there. I can't say I've done a whole bunch with that, but certainly I've played around with it from time to time. But in my general workouts with general music, no, I'm not doing things in rhythm.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of interesting how people like what beat people pick up on, like what part of the like the clean squat press thing is an interesting one, or the animal movements and like how they flow, and just trying to like Bruce Lee would talk about, like sometimes you're on the beat and then sometimes you want to be off the beat, because I want, maybe if we're boxing, I want to get you into a rhythm and then I'll be able to land because I'm going to do something weird and offbeat. And so I was just thinking of that when you were talking about like the music and the
right. Well, that's another example similar to anchoring, right? So if you do the same thing like 3 times in a row when you're boxing or some sort of fighting, right? Then the person's expecting that, and then you do something very different, right? You've anchored them with something in order to set them up for something down the line.
Yeah. So when you were like studying, like what was your source for like what made you? Like you're talking about the NLP and the hypnotism. So what made you put that together? Like how? Like what was that? What was your like source of information? Was it someone else that was really strong that was doing it, or?
Yeah. It was really, I mean, it comes out of this whole thing that I wasn't naturally strong or athletic. So as I was getting into this and wanted to be super strong and achieve all these crazy goals, I was always looking for an edge. And that's what led me into the mental training as well as a bunch of other stuff that I do. I've had a number of different teachers in the field. One of the main guys, he was a martial artist and he did a similar sort of thing. So he was my model. So he studied NLP, he studied hypnosis, he studied all these things in order to be able to apply it to his martial arts skill and accelerate that. So that was just my model for me. I said, oh, he did it there, I can do it for strength training and fitness. So I was learning from him as well as a bunch of other teachers in NLP. NLP was actually founded in Santa Cruz, where I live, and there was a program here at the university with some of the original people involved in NLP. So I did a number of trainings with them as well as with a few other people.
Yeah, it was. Were you talking about John LaTourette?
Yeah, John LaTourette, known as the Speed Man. He was that model for me.
And what did you? I guess I hope it goes well, because I don't want to like talk bad about people on over the air, unless it's like whatever the truth is. I'm cool with whatever the truth is. Like, what did you? Because he's kind of a controversial sort of. He's just. Some people say that he calls like self-doctor. Like, say he's not really a doctor. He got this like fake doctorate, or like, like he's just like landing like these.
So I went up there.
Like, so what was your?
I trained with him in martial arts, and a lot of people, they say things because, well, one, I mean, the guy's kind of an asshole, which he likes to be, and I think there can be utility in that. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is people just don't understand a lot of what he's doing. So with the speed hitting, right? So he was actually clocked by Black Belt Magazine for hitting a guy 16 times in 1 second. Right, that's moving fast, right?
Yeah.
But people think, oh, you're punching or something like that. It's not like that. It's flowing movements, and really, it doesn't take much to incapacitate someone. So he's going for weak points on the body, what could be termed gamok, right? So different, the arteries or different things in the neck, all these weak points in the body. It doesn't take a lot of power behind those when you have speed, because force equals mass times acceleration. So if you actually know how to use your body mechanics in order to move quite quickly, then there's a lot of force there without necessarily having to put your entire, making it look like a big haymaker type of movement, right?
Yeah.
And having trained at his martial arts school, like I would not want to be hit by that guy doing those movements at all, even though he's north of his 70s right now, and I still would not want to mess with him.
Yeah, I've had I've never met him in person, but I've like through like some messaging and stuff, like kind of asking him about some stuff because he gets really in depth with like the body's energy
Hmm.
and like you were saying, like it can like what are people looking at? So maybe these like strikes, he's like proving this theory for one that he is legitimately fast, 16 times 1 second, and it doesn't really take that many times. So maybe if he was like in a real street fight, he's not going to try to do that 16 hit
No,
combo.
that's a show off type of thing. You don't
Yeah.
need to hit someone 16 times. You do it 3-4 times, you're good to go. A lot of the moves, it's funny how much overkill are in there when you're learning techniques. Not to like, oh, you're going to use this technique in the street, right? But it's to train in these master keys. So you're learning how to do these different things, and it's just like, oh, this one technique, you kill a person 4 times over if you actually did the whole thing.
And how long did you actually work with him personally, or?
I actually moved up to Oregon where he was living and trained with him in person 7 months, but I was also doing seminars and whatnot for a number of years in addition to that.
Yeah, and like, could you compare it to? I mean, not like to just make it about him. Like, so for his, did you train other martial arts also?
I've done just a couple things, but no, that's my predominant martial arts training. And yeah, so I can't say that I've experienced a whole bunch of other things. What I do know is a lot of martial arts out there, it's, it's either about competition or it's to look good. Really the point with that was to actually know how to fight in, life or death situations, know how to control yourself and whatnot. And I can say without a doubt that it was effective for that, whereas many of the martial arts out there are not necessarily so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, like, what attracted you to his style was not just the speed stuff, but the mental stuff, and that's
Yeah,
why.
it wasn't even about the martial arts for me. Like, I'm not like I enjoy martial arts and that was fun to train, but for me, it was predominantly about learning kind of these the mental approaches on top of that because I wanted to learn those things to be able to apply in my strength training because that's my major field of study, that and health and whatnot. So learning these things, how he applied it to martial arts, I just wanted to kind of do the same thing in this parallel field.
Yeah, that makes sense. So he was just using martial arts to teach you these mental things as a vehicle, but maybe you can teach the same thing with a kettlebell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Same concept. So like where are you now, like with your like mental trainer? Is there like, do you have like this next thing that you're trying to figure out that you're trying to add to your system, or is there?
I'm always constantly experimenting and tweaking, just like I am in the gym, like with the kettlebell juggling. I'll experiment and find some new moves. I'm always tweaking different things, and with the like visualization stuff that we were just talking about, I'm constantly working on ways to make it a little more simplified and usable for people as well as myself. So I don't have necessarily like a next big thing I'm aiming for there, but it's just constant iteration and experimentation.
Yeah, and you're also doing a lot with herbs. Don't you?
Yeah.
Your herb. You own the company.
Yeah. Yeah. So I run a business called Lost Empire Herbs. People can find it at lostempireherbs.com. That was another one, my secret weapon. So besides the mental training, as I got into fitness, I realized, if I get healthier and eat nutritious food, that will support my recovery and I won't be sick, so I won't be laid low. So got into that, and part of that for me was also the herbalism, understanding that you can use different plants and fungi and all kinds of other things to really support that peak level of performance. And eventually that led to founding a company where we could source those materials and go for the highest quality stuff possible.
And are you like making your like the tinctures and this kind of thing? You're blending, like what are you using and how are you using it? Like,
Yeah.
personally, like I guess for you or.
Mm-hmm. It's similar there. I'm always experimenting with new things, and we have stuff in the works, so I'll be experimenting with that. I mean, I have so many herbs at my house, it's pretty insane at this point. But I'll make tinctures or different herbal medicines myself, but then we also have the ones that we, of course, sell, and a lot of those we're sourcing from other places or manufacturing with other companies. So yeah, it really depends on what I'm focusing on at the time, but I have kind of my regular routine, and then there's some experiments on top of that, but I'm also very intuitive with it. So even with my training, I'm always listening to my body, and actually have like specific protocols and steps for doing that. I feel that's really important. It's same with taking the herbs, right? You know, what do I need in that moment? And then I'll take that herb. So like right now, I can take this one just as we're doing an interview. This is a good one for relaxing, calming down, and I'll probably speak a little less slowly or a little more slowly.
And what is that?
This is blue vervain. This is one of my favorite herbs. With this, I can literally like feel the stress kind of lighten off my nerves immediately, and so less muscle tension, but specifically not by relaxing the muscles themselves, but by lightening it off the nerves in the first place. It's a real good one for like type A personalities, hard driving people. It helps calm down and get back in the body.
Yeah, and are you you get into like are you thinking of like, okay, I take this because it has this chemical in it, and you have like the scientific name of the chemical, or like to I guess to preface the question, I read a book called, I think it was called Sacred Plant Medicine, or no, Plant Spirit Medicine or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And there's this like Westerner, and he goes to the rainforest and to learn from this shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And then so he meets the shaman, and they're walking back to the shaman's house, and the Westerner is like, "Oh, what does this do?" And then he's like walking, "Oh, what does that do? What's this good for? What's that good for?" And the shaman is just kind of like laughing at him, and he's not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get back to the shaman's house, and the shaman is telling his wife and kids that like what has happened. He was asking like, this plant did this and this plant did that, and they're all laughing and making fun of him. And because his thing is like, almost no matter what your problem is, he's going to use one plant, because it's not the chemical,
Mm-hmm.
it's the spirit of the plant that's going to heal you.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's not all shamans say that. Like where I teach, they have herbalists there, and they can talk about very scientifically the exact compound in whatever it is, the Latin name. But
Mm-hmm.
then you talk to him a little bit more, and you can it seems pretty crazy, it seems pretty far out there. So like, where are you on this scale of esoteric and scientific?
Right. I like to look at it all. One of my herbalism teachers, he puts it this way, people are looking, okay, I hold it this herb, so what is that good for, right? But really, plants are living entities, right? The things that we form relationships with. So you go, when we met, did we go, so Ryan, what are you good for? It's not the way we talk to people, right? And really that ideally should be the same sort of relationship we have with plants and other aspects of our ecology too. So yeah, I definitely, I love science, especially when it's done right. The deeper I've gone in that, just the more I see lots of problems going on there. But I'll certainly look at the chemical constituents of a plant and what those do, and the molecular action and that sort of thing, as well as the ancient wisdom, or how these esoteric traditions look at it. And yeah, I've had experiences, real relationships, communications with plants, and not just the psychoactive ones, really forming a relationship. So actually just yesterday, the past 2 days, I was up in Portland, where we get our ashwagandha. We know a guy that farms and grows them there, so we were up there to talk business, but also was having that experience of working with the ashwagandha and being able to plant it. And I've been taking that as a tincture in various other forms for years and years, but I had never actually worked with the fresh plant, right? So it was great to get to kind of deepen my relationship with that plant.
Yeah, I have some ashwagandha. I take that like periodically, and ginseng, and I might take it for a while and then stop, And then if I get to a point where I'm feeling like I just need like a little more vitality, then I'll start taking it again. And I think this is the first time I got it in a pill form.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had it before. I guess when I first started hearing about it and learning about it, it was at a yoga class, and he sold herbs, and it was more like in a kind of like a powdery form.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're like, what is your like favorite method for taking the ashwagandha? Do you have like a certain amount that you would take for a certain time?
Mm-hmm. With the herbs, it really depends on the herb as far as the best way to take it. Some of them, they only work with one sort of extract versus another. A lot of that often comes down to the chemistry of it. For instance, the alcohol will pull out certain things, or only water will pull out. So there's stuff like that to work with. Personally, my favorite form is like tinctures. I really like this sort of thing just because they're convenient, right? Like I have these at my desk, as we're talking here, I can squirt some in my mouth and get the effect from it immediately. So one of the important parts of this is tasting them. I'm not big on capsules. It's certainly that I recognize that they're really convenient, and there's certainly a place for them, especially with some of the worst tasting things. But the taste is actually the first part of its introduction to your body, and you being able to feel something. So that blue vervain, I can literally get a feeling from it right away. This isn't necessarily the case with all the plants. But the ashwagandha that we sell is in a tinctured form, and to me, that's the best ashwagandha I've ever had. And I'm not saying that just because we sell it, but so one, it's grown in the U.S., and I believe this is the only commercial operation doing that. All the ashwagandha otherwise comes from India. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's kind of cool to have something local. I have a good relationship with the farmer. I know what he's doing. It's biodynamically prepared. It's all these additional steps that most other ashwagandha isn't going to get. And then the tincture is using the fresh plant rather than having it dried out and powdered. Now the powders can work. I mean, you can just powder the roots raw and take that and you'll get some benefit. There's also different types of extract. I know there's like trademarked extracts of ashwagandha in the market. So it's really going to depend on the person. I personally really like the tincture of that. There's some additional stuff. There's the spagyric preparation, which is actually some of the esoteric alchemy stuff that's done with the plant. So there's a lot going on with it, and that's why I feel we have some of the best ashwagandha out there. But there's lots of other good ones too.
Yeah, when you say like locally sourced,
somewhat locally, within the same country.
Yeah.
In this case. Yeah.
Well, it just made me think of like honey, because you should have honey that's as close to where you live as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that is there like anything to do with that kind of thing? Like maybe it's better to have this plant that's grown as close as possible.
Right. Yeah, I think with the honey, for people not familiar with that, that's, you're getting the plants, the pollens of the various plants in the area, and that can specifically be good with allergies. If you think about plants and all sorts of herbs, right, they're kind of capturing the ecology of where they grow. Like I've never even been to India, so getting ashwagandha from halfway around the world, let alone, just the time like it takes to travel here, and is that the freshest, and if that's the right kind of quality with that kind of stuff. And let me say, we also do source a whole bunch of stuff from China and India. So this is one of our localish suppliers that we happen to have. But that's harder to know about there versus something that, it's Oregon, similar state in many ways to, Central California. We have a lot of the same plants here and whatnot. So I think there is something to that by having it more nearby, it does capture something that is going to support you in a different way. I can't say there's anything scientific about that, but I think that goes to that esoteric principle we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so in the tincture, the advantage of that is there's no it doesn't have as long as a deterioration process. Whereas you're saying if you get like a powder, like I said, this is the first time I got it in pills. It's not a capsule. It's like a pill thing.
Mm-hmm.
I never had it like that before. So I'm thinking this pill's not very big. And when I would take the powder, it would be more. So I was like kind of wondering, like, what am I really getting? But it was like And then you were talking about how do you say it, spagyrics?
Spagyrics, yeah.
And do you sell those also?
Yeah, so just a few of our tinctures are spagyrically prepared. The ashwagandha, also this same farmer, he does some wild crafting. So we get our nettle root and the blue vervain that I took earlier that I was talking about, that comes from them as well. So the spagyric preparation, it's a time-intensive and more advanced preparation that involves, normally with a tincture, you are putting the herbs in the alcohol, letting them sit there, and then at some point straining off the alcohol, and that's your tincture. And then you throw away the herbs because the alcohol is supposed to draw as much as you can out of them. But there's still more in the herbs. This spagyric process, the spagyric tincturing process, involves taking that marc and then burning it down and grinding it and burning it and grinding it till you have this white powder. And then that is, you pour water on that distilled water, and you're going to separate the soluble from the insoluble minerals in there. Then you separate those off, evaporate down until you get like the crystals. In alchemy terms, it's known as the salt of the plant, and not to be confused with calcium chloride, like chemical salt, but it's the salt principle. And then that gets added back to the tincture. What that does is basically you're adding the body of the plant back into the tincture, and therefore it's able to work on your body a bit better. It makes it a stronger, more potent thing that's going to work more.
Yeah, that's an interesting process. And so are you like, what other herbs are up there? Or do you take it in like combination, like with ginseng, and are you combining particular ones? And I know you said like depends on what your goal
right.
is.
Yeah, so just some recent stuff. I did also, I've done the spagyric process myself. I have the tools to do that, so I'm making my own herbal stuff. I just recently made a ginseng spagyric for the first time, and that was a lot of fun because I was working with 12-year-old ginseng roots, American ginseng. So this is some really high-quality stuff. We paid over $1,000 for a pound. Good ginseng costs a lot. And then I was using a 12-year-old scotch. Normally use like a vodka or a pure alcohol as a tincture, but for an experiment a long time ago, I found that whiskey and ginseng goes together well, like the flavor profiles match. So I was using 12-year-old ginseng roots and 12-year-old scotch, and prepared spagyric with that, and it came out really well. Another one that we have, we're actually, I think, releasing this next week on our website. It's a blend of 7 different medicinal mushrooms, and this one's also spagyrically prepared, which basically no one else is doing this kind of thing. So I'm very excited about that, and that's called Mushroom Alchemy. This does not have the right label on it, unfortunately, so it just has the name there, but this is really good. And I'm a huge fan of the medicinal mushrooms, so reishi, chaga, lion's mane, turkey tail, all different types of mushrooms like this. Yeah,
mushrooms are a very interesting little creature. Yeah. What they can do. And so, like, whether it's like spagyrically prepared, then you're still taking it in just a dropper. So you might take like a dropper full, or
yeah, that's a general dosage with many of the tinctures. You get some stronger stuff, and might just be like a few drop dose. But really, with herbs in general, the dosage varies widely. Like our pine pollen, which happens to be our biggest seller, we recommend from like a half teaspoon a day up to 3 tablespoons per day. So dosage can very much vary, and it depends on you as an individual and depends on what you're looking for.
Why is the pine pollen so popular?
So that's our number one selling herb. We do a lot of focus around hormonal support. Pine pollen, it's literally the pollen of pine trees. It's pretty unique in that it actually has testosterone, DHEA, and other hormones in it, as well as some novel phytoandrogens, things from the plant kingdom that we don't have but still act on our androgen receptors. So it's increasing in popularity. Most people have not heard of it, except that, a yellow coat of dust will cover their car if they live in an area with pine trees. But taking it as a supplement, it's really helpful to combat all the various endocrine disrupting chemicals we have in our environment. So stuff coming from plastics, pesticides, skincare products, all these different places where we're getting things that are wreaking havoc on our hormone systems, causing disease and all sorts of problems on top of that. Pine pollen helps to kind of shift what happens there, helps to get rid of some of that stuff, cleared out from the body, as well as support your own testosterone production.
And so what kind of, I guess, like what kind of increases are you seeing? Have you like done like blood tests, or have you done like maybe a deadlift cycle or something like that? So here's a deadlift cycle without, and then here's a deadlift cycle with. Have you done?
I haven't done a deadlift cycle, and I can't say I've experimented with it tightly enough to know how it infects my workouts, but we have had results from customers of ours who have had before and after blood work and seen results. Can't say this is typical for some people. So no work works for anyone, right? So if anything I'm saying for the listeners here sounds interesting, I recommend trying it out. We have a money-back guarantee, so you can just try things, and if they work for you, great, buy more. If not, you can get your money back. Try something else. So yeah, we've had some customers who have had blood tests and like doubled their testosterone, or gone from low to decent amounts or higher. I know for myself, like I don't personally take the pine pollen very often. I did in the past. I feel it was good for helping me get to a better place, but my testosterone, the few times I've tested it, I'm usually in the 800 to 900s, 700 plus. So that's total testosterone. So I have good high testosterone. I don't need something that really is as strong as that stuff is, especially in the tincture form. So yeah, I have good results doing all the things I do for testosterone, and it's good to have, but I don't need it at this stage. Whereas many of our customers are, especially older guys, and that's where they really need some support. So yeah, we have plenty of happy customers, and a few of them have done before and after tests. Unfortunately, at this time, pine pollen is not something that's well studied scientifically. There's actually like no human trials at all. I just recently come through all of PubMed to look at it. At some point in the future, we'll probably end up funding one ourselves just because we want to see it happen. But based on the anecdotal evidence so far, it's looking very promising.
Yeah, sounds like it. I remember somebody on your Strength Health Inner Circle or something just posted about his results in sexual vitality, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we hear some interesting
stories.
He
worded it differently, but and so that's like why a lot of guys are taking it, because they want, or the ashwagandha, or a lot of these things because they want this more like sexual vitality and.
Well, vitality, I mean, that same sort of energy that's good for working out is the energy needed for sex. Oftentimes those things go hand in hand, right? So if you're doing well in one, you typically do well in the other. Not always the case, but it's that same sort of yang energy, like male energy, that drives both of these things. So a herb that helps with one helps with the other.
Yeah, and you were talking like your own levels and what you were doing. The other things that you're doing that promote testosterone production, what is it that you're talking about that you're doing?
But there's a lot that goes into that. Really, like a high testosterone plan in my mind is like a natural living plan, and then a few smaller tweaks of things here and there. So the first thing is to really minimize those endocrine disrupting chemicals. Those things, a lot of the man-made chemicals, they're just going to stand in your way and do horrible things. You may not notice today, but 20 years from now, that's where things can really go bad. So, and there's a lot you need to do to try to get those down. So, trying to minimize the use of plastic, especially around like food at all. And even stuff like, a lot of plastic's BPA free now. But the problem is a lot of times they just replace the BPA with BPF or BPS, which are other bisphenols, which have the exact same sort of effects. So there's crazy details like those you have to understand, and through time you get to know it. So there's a lot of stuff around that. Like I don't use skincare products. A lot of those have phthalates and plasticizers and various things that also enter into your body, because anything that goes on your skin goes into your body. Then, healthy eating. I eat as natural food as possible. It's stuff like that. Keep hydrated. Then obviously the strength training is an important part of the hormone health, sleeping well. All the foundations are strong, and that's what's really going to lead there in the first place. Then a little bit of, working with some of the herbs can be very strong allies in this battle as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the lifting weights, and so like what kind of training are you doing now? I know you do like a million different things, but like
right.
what are you focusing on now? And how old are you?
I am 33.
33. Okay. And I guess kind of what I was thinking in my mind is like I have a real crazy like work schedule now, and I'm having like less time for workouts, and so I'm also thinking like ahead, like so you could do like this 3-hour long, super intensive, completely waste yourself kind of workout, and you can get nothing against like CrossFit, but because I think they've changed a lot, and I have a buddy that does CrossFit, and
it really depends on the gym.
Yeah, it seems like his gym is like legit, and his technique is really good, and all that stuff. But like you think of like just get in there and crush every day, personal records, every day more and more and more, but it seems like maybe that's like where Strong First is going with like this like strong planning or plan strong, and this endurance thing is like in the long run you don't need that. You can do less, and then you have like less stress levels, and so I could see how that would affect like testosterone and your overall like vitality, because you're not just wasting yourself in the gym. You might be getting bigger and stronger and more ripped, but you can do like the same with less. Like where are you like now with your training? What are you focusing on, and what's the reasoning behind whatever you're up to now?
Yeah. So as I was saying before, I really listen to my body, and that means that I'm actually not working as hard as people might assume I'm working. Most of my workouts are pretty easy, and by doing the way I do thing, I can hit PRs kind of every single day, though I'm looking at not just, maximum weight or anything, but also the amount of reps I can do in a set, total volume or density. So looking across those factors, generally every single thing I'm doing in every workout improves just by cycling through a whole bunch of stuff. So that works really well because I feel for good testosterone. Yeah, if you're running yourself into the ground, especially if you have a lot of stress in other areas of your life, and even if you don't necessarily feel stress, from the stuff like the endocrine disrupting chemicals and pollutants in our environment, like your body is going through stress. So if your stress is too high, then cortisol is going to be chronically elevated, and cortisol and testosterone are inversely related. So too much cortisol, that's going to throw your testosterone down. So super hard workouts done all the time is going to jack up cortisol and tank your testosterone. So not a good place to be. So for many people, obviously a lot of people do need to have a little more intensity in workouts, but for many other people, they actually need to bring it down and would be served much better to do that. As far as what I'm personally focusing on right now, my focus shifts over time, but I'm doing a lot of body weight training. So I'm working on kind of what I see as the foundational body weight exercises, handstand push-ups, pull-ups, hanging leg raises, as well as ab wheel rollouts, and then variations of the one-legged squat. I'm doing a lot with those, and doing some grip training on top of that. And once I build a stronger foundation, like one of my big goals that I want to eventually hit is a strict, true one-arm chin-up.
Mm-hmm. What kind of a lot of people want that one-arm pull-up. What are you like? What kind of progression are you doing, or what are you doing like specifically for that one?
Right now, I'm doing a bit of weighted pull-ups. Kind of a sub goal. I want to get a good pull-up with the Beast, the 48 kilogram kettlebell. I can do that with a chin up, but not quite the pull up yet. So I'm working on with the weighted pull ups predominantly right now, weighted pull ups and chin ups. I mix between the two because that's how I like to do things. But then after I achieve that, my plan, I feel one of the best ways to progress with it, and I've used this on and off over the years. Obviously, haven't gotten to that full goal, but just assisted with the hand and working it down the arm over time. And really I'll like, this is a certain position then right here. So I'll kind of mark it off, and I'll be hitting those progressive steps along the way or working with that system. I feel that's probably the best way to get there. Of course, there's not only one way to do it. So that's my plan.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that kind of thing. I forget where I read that like whoever was emphasizing that because I think a lot of people can start with
Oh
one.
yeah, this is easy. That's almost just doing a pull up, but you move it down and then
Yeah,
quickly it becomes really hard. Then you can go on the bicep. By the time your shoulder, you're almost doing the thing one arm. So if you can work that progression and make the thing is, going from a pull up to one arm pull up, if you didn't have anything in between them, that progressive jump is too big. Even if you did 100 pull ups, you probably couldn't do a strict one arm pull up. So you got to break it up and have the steps in between it.
yeah. Are you
I've
doing
written about the topic before, but I wasn't the first one, so plenty of other people have too.
are you doing like negatives?
I've been experimenting a little bit with some isometrics and negatives. So even with the weighted stuff, like I'd start in the top position with a 60 kilogram kettlebell, hold that for a bit, and then do some negatives. So I've been playing around with that. Just really looking what is the weak point, and the weak point tends to be that top. So working some overloaded holds at the top seems to be helping out.
It's like at the top, is it? I mean, because like your shoulders are shrugged, so you're trying to like, or is it?
It's just, getting that chin over the bar, getting the throat to the bar, whatever you're going for. That's always the hardest part, whether you're doing reps or whatnot, people struggling and chicken necking to get there. So
Yeah.
that's the toughest part of the movement. Not the only tough part, like you can get stopped elsewhere, but it tends to be that top part, getting that locked in is the hard part.
Yeah, when I was at the Strong First certification, they also had like the Beast Tamer and the or Iron Maiden, which is the female version. So they have to do everything with the 53 pounder. And there was one of the females. She had her chin over the bar, but they didn't pass her. They didn't because
this is the standard throat to bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that avoids, like, you can get the chin right there, but really you got to be another
You had to be
little bit to get there.
And she was just pulling and pulling and pulling, and her shoulder. I think it was because her shoulders were up too much.
Yeah.
But man, to be like so close and
so close. I've seen that happen too with someone that was going for the Iron Tamer. It's like you couldn't have been closer without making it than he was, and it's just frustrating to see that fail because of that last bit.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about like a high standard though, because I saw somebody fail their snatch test with 99 out of 100, and 99 is less than 100. So if you fail, you get like the 100th one, probably like a second too late or something like that. And
I was going for myself before I did the current training. I was working on the Beast snatch test. So my goal was with the Beast, the 48 kilogram or 106 pound kettlebell, snatching that 100 times in 10 minutes. Jeez. I never quite got to that goal despite working at it for quite some time. My best ever was 91, but I just decided I needed to do some other things, and that was not a fun thing. So 91's good enough there, and there was no necessarily standard that I had to hit to pass anything, so I'll take that. That's high enough level, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a heavy snatch for even just
4 reps.
Like when you're going after a test like that, what style of snatch are you doing?
It's really, it's definitely more hard style than gear void, just because that's more than half my body weight. I did work on adding some mass in order to be able to get this a little bit better. So I was up over 200 pounds, but it was still over half body weight. So you can't do like a fully relaxed snatch with that. Really, it was kind of with my the kettlebell snatching, because I learned the hard style and I learned the gear void, depending on which weight I'm going for, but it's really kind of adapted to what I'm focusing on. So I kind of have my own style, which has elements of both of it.
Yeah, it's so like you'll still do so without like the 106 pounder. If you're doing, are you still like going for like high numbers with like the 24 kilogram or?
I haven't done that in a long time. I mean, a while back I did 301 reps in 10 minutes. They were cut a little short. Some people yelled at me for not following the exact standard there, but hell, I was going fast. So, but that was, I had to like literally like pulling down the weight in order to go faster, not just letting it drop in either way. So once again, it was adapting different methods and styles, little aspects of each in order to be able to pull that off. And even like the breathing was changing because it was so fast. I had to do what I call 2-cycle breathing, like this 2 breaths every cycle, and that just kept it continuous without any holding of the breath. So little things like that made a big difference when you're going for a crazy goal like that.
Yeah, that's a bunch of them. Regardless, yeah, I remember like getting some of the you getting some of the, those aren't snatches or what.
Says a bunch of people that could not come close to performing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's not like you don't know how to do
Right.
that their standard or like the sport standard.
Mm.
This is your thing, and you're trying to do this thing your way, and this is how you did it. And so if it doesn't match what somebody else says is cool, then so what? And like you said, you give that a try using like.
Yeah. And I've competed. I've done like 1 or 2 competitions in kettlebell sports. So, then you got to make sure you do the exact form because you got judges calling you on that. So, yeah, I definitely didn't perform 300 in competition there.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. And when you were like I also have your the Indestructible Body book, and so it's like conditioning the joints. I have like all of your stuff. Like
Yep. That's one of my pretty popular one.
Yeah, and it'd been a while since I looked through it, but just like before we were coming on here, I went and grabbed everything. And you want to just like talk about like what is it like you're seeing? Like I see like the ankles inverted and stuff like now, like the toes curled up, and you're doing like a lot of different like joint conditioning. So like what's the Indestructible Body?
Yeah, so the whole premise of that is conditioning the body in certain ways so that it has capacity to basically not break, to be indestructible. I mean, there's only so much you can do if you're hit by a car, but I'm also of the opinion that if you're hurting yourself in the gym, you're doing something wrong, and it's not just about strict form. Certainly that can be an aspect of it, but learning to listen to your body is important. So by working with it is really kind of focused around the joints in all these different ways. What I talk about in there is you need to build strength, you need to build flexibility, and you need to build mobility. And often you want to bring these together in different ways, because if you just have pure strength or pure flexibility, you can still, if you get taken to an extreme range of motion, but you don't have strength there, that's the kind of thing where injuries can happen. So really that was just a bunch of the exercises in that book I picked up from different places over the years, but also some of them I created myself just playing around and, what's really going to target this area of the body. For instance, I covered the wrists in there. For a long time I had a very chronically bad right wrist to where like a lot of times it stood in my way of doing handstands and I'd actually be leaning to one side. At one point I got fed up and was like, I'm going to fix this. And, a lot of those drills came and just working it, so not just working the flexibility here, but different positions and extending it in these different ways in order to, eventually I got rid of all the pain that was involved. It's still not 100% as flexible as the left wrist, but it doesn't have any of that pain that was literally there for years.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So like I remember you saying stuff like you're talking like form, and it's kind of like talking about before, like where somebody else says, this is how you do this lift. And then you're saying, actually, you don't have to do it that way. Like maybe bad form is not,
it's not necessarily bad.
Yeah. So
it really depends what you're going for. Obviously with like you were talking competition or whatnot, if there's that standard and you have to adhere to that standard, that's really where form is important, right? Because you need to make sure you match this ideal that you're going for in order to have that standard, in order to compete with other people. But the commonly given reason for form, that it's there to stop you from hurting yourself, I don't necessarily agree with that. There are some basics that it's kind of like rules of thumb. It's in general, it's useful, but even like deadlifting with a round back, for some people that works, and sometimes you need to do that. For instance, lifting heavy stones, you can't necessarily do that with a straight back. So should you only ever lift with a straight back in perfect form, or is there points in working at it in bad form and actually building up your body's ability to handle that. That's the kind of stuff that's also an indestructible body. So it's like your joint shouldn't move this way, so here's how to move it this way safely in order to make it more indestructible, so your body's able to handle that.
Yeah, so maybe if somebody could practice like with the bad form, quote unquote, and then when they're using like a heavier weight, like more towards their max, and they're trying to use the like standard form, then they have a little bit more room for
error,
more safety room. And so like where if they weren't practicing the bad form stuff, their joints aren't going to be conditioned, and then like when they hit bad form accidentally under a heavier load, then something's going to pop. And then so like doing it this way that you're saying is going to prepare the joint.
Of course, you have to do this smartly, right? And once again, keep harping on this, but listening to your body. So your body, once you learn how to listen to it, which is really about feeling the signals it's giving you at all times, then you're able to, okay, this may look like bad form to someone else, but my body's saying, go for it, go and do this. It's feeling great. So it can be enhancing you in that way. But if you don't really understand your body's signals, then it can be useful to listen to other people as far as what you should be doing. But ultimately, you want to learn how to internalize this feedback and listen to it so that you can go outside the boundaries and do it safely and really learn what you should be doing. Because just because something looks ideal for someone doesn't mean it's actually appropriate for your body. I've heard stories of people who were forced to do good form in certain things, and that's what broke them, because really they needed adjustments for their physiology, for limitations they may have had. By forcing them to do things a certain way, that's what caused the injury. So the good form caused the injury, essentially, quote unquote, good form.
Yeah, I think that I remember like asking like Donnie Thompson, and it was through a message. I've never met him personally. But I was reading like a lot of like Stuart McGill, and it's like, this is how you lift. And then of course, like if you're lifting like a stone, like you said, he's like, that's different because you're bracing and you're not extending under load. The vertebrae aren't really moving very much, so it makes it safer like that. And that's how you have to lift it. But I was asking Donnie, because he talks about injuries, and I said, I was talking about like injuries in powerlifting and lifting with the rounded back, the flex spine with the bar. And he said that there's a certain point that even if you're using perfect form, that your back is just going to say F you, and it's going to break, even if you are using the good form. So like maybe like you're like saying a little bit ago, maybe it'll have by practicing this way and conditioning the joints under these weird loads, then you won't have that happen quite so much under the like. And is that like what you're?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I'll say for myself, like, most people look at me deadlifting and they may cringe, right? But round back deadlifting happens to work for me. But once again, I have to listen to my body's feedback. I don't push it. I don't even do a deadlift if it's not feeling good for me on that day. If I was like competing or something, that'd be something else. I might work on it. But even then, I wouldn't be pushing to go for a limit because my body's telling me, no, you're not going to do it right now. So I feel that's the most essential part. But then, you can play with the confines of the box of form on top of that.
And like, what do you think about like the Jefferson curl? Are you doing those? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, where you're unrolling the spine. Yeah, I think that's one of these things, right? So you take a light weight and you're working with, and you are working the spinal erectors and everything, and doing stuff that certain spine experts would say you shouldn't be doing, but you do it in the right way, and it's just going to be strengthening all those weak links.
Yeah. Do you do those regularly?
I haven't done that specifically. I'm a big fan of the Jefferson deadlift, which is a bit different. That's where you're straddling the barbell. I really like that lift because it's asymmetrical, which is how most sports and life are. It's also in some ways, even though you're twisted and asymmetrical, in some ways it's safer because the bar is actually centered directly under you rather than a conventional or sumo deadlift where the bar is slightly in front of you. So I feel that can actually help with a lot of things. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. But yeah, the Jefferson curl, I've certainly done that over the years, just not a whole bunch regularly.
Yeah, I'm kind of like torn on because I kind of, it's like I read Stuart McGill and I can't say I know better than him because he's saying don't do it. And he's like, and other people are saying, and maybe they're.
I go back to Bob Peoples. You familiar with Bob Peoples? He was like a farmer guy back 50s, 60s, and at the time, way ahead of anybody else, he was deadlifting 800 pounds. And what he would do, he would completely round his back. He'd blow out his air before deadlifting. So once again, not recommending anyone else necessarily do this, but I like to look at those guys and say like, oh, he performed at this level. He was able to do it safely. It worked for him. You know, it could possibly work for me. It may not. You have to find out yourself what's going to work for you. But you look at that and then, you know, Stuart McGill, he's saying these things, but is he deadlifting that kind of weight? That's what I look at.
Yeah, it's kind of like who do you trust? And maybe if you have like a client, you're going to want to err on the side of caution for sure. And then, but like if you're doing it like with yourself, and it's like I think this is okay, and try it, and it's like I think it's getting better, and yeah, it's kind of hard to tell who. Like what?
That's why I think you have to learn how to listen to your body because that's the only guide. Like someone outside can't feel what your body's feeling. Someone outside you can direct you in the wrong place, but your body doesn't want to hurt itself. So if you learn how to interpret, the problem is with so much of like fitness, it's, you know, mental toughness, push through the pain, you know, you have to give 110%. And what that can be doing is overriding those internal signals. Because if you just take your mind and kind of suppress what's coming from the body, there's a time and place for that. But ultimately, I feel that learning how to interpret those signals is going to serve people best.
And you're talking about your rack pulls, so where you would lift a very heavy weight, a short range of motion, and I like to do those sometimes too. And I think that was the technique I was doing when I read your mental muscle book. I think I put it to test on the short range deadlift. And like, how much like do you like do those kinds of like super maximal lifts, and like, do you apply it to other ones? Are you doing like short range deadlift, or I mean bench press, or short range like just like press from here to here kind of thing?
Once again, this depends on what I'm training with on the cycle. So currently, not right now. I was working partial deadlifts and actually partial Jefferson deadlifts, so partials with the straddle. And I was working at a higher position, then worked it down, but now I'm working with predominantly deadlifts from the ground, so normal, but done in that Jefferson style. So I've done more with deadlifts than the other lifts, but absolutely I've done squats, overhead. Not as much bench press. I just not a huge fan of the bench press exercise, so I haven't trained it all that much. But there's definitely application of these partial movements and everything. And I feel that, I mean, the partials are part of indestructible body too. I think really overloading the joints and the bones in this way can really help to make your body overall much stronger. And actually, it's much safer than even full range lifts in many ways, despite the poundage increases. So I'm huge on these. I also think that they likely, going back to the earlier conversation, are really great for testosterone, especially the partial squats and deadlifts. There's no research on this that I've seen. I combed through everything I could, but yeah, partials just don't make it into exercise physiology departments at universities. It's a little too, not sure what the word for, but outside of the box of what they're looking at. But I feel just based on the feelings I've had and whatnot, I think, you know, it makes you feel like a man to lift 1,000 pounds. That's what I felt personally. And of course, it starts even at earlier weights. But I think these partials can really activate something that you don't quite get the same even with the full range lifts, though by all means those are absolutely great for hormone health as well. I think the partials may bring something even more to the table. I would love to see that actually tested.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So I did like a few weeks ago or something like that. I didn't have a lot of time, and I wanted like some kind of. I didn't really feel like doing deadlifts from the ground. I didn't have that kind of energy. I wanted some kind of. I forget what I usually call it, like just a short workout that stimulates a lot. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to do some rack pulls, and I got to like 607 without straps, and it does feel good. So like, yeah, I was lifting this really heavy weight, and I didn't have to like go through it's like more mentally exhausting to go all the way from the ground, and even with half that weight or whatever. When you were doing like the 1,000 pounds, are you using straps?
Yeah, so I'm not a big advocate of support equipment. Like I don't use a belt or knee wraps or anything. But with rack pulls, the grip is, even if with a strong grip, excuse me, even with a strong grip, the grip's gonna tend to be the limiting factor. So to really overload the legs, the hips, the back in that is something that I use and I advocate people use if they really want to push the weight there.
Yeah, I was thinking of adding the straps. I've used the straps very, very little in that, but I was thinking like, so like part of it's like staying tight, like to activate everything, be like really stiff. So when I would lift it, and I was like lifting like 450 or something like that, and I was just trying to hold on to it for as long as I could. And then like the 607, I held for like a second or something like that.
Yeah.
But
I think it's good with that to, go as far as you can without the straps. So you're training the grip and getting the feel for that. But then after that, start using the straps and push it up further.
And are you trying to like just like stay like get like tighter and tighter, like all your muscles like more and more?
It definitely takes a lot of time. I mean, there's maximal tension going throughout the body. I feel you were mentioning using the mental training exercises for really that kind of psych up state. Nothing beats like the short range partial movements, because there's like no technique really at them at all. You can really throw everything at it. So that can be a good application of it and a good place where you can really test it out. Because when you're going short range partials, an extra 50 pounds, which would be a big matter, and a full range lift, it's not huge there. So you can definitely see some bigger jumps in performance increases.
Yeah, I think they're just fun. Like, so it makes you feel like a man to lift that kind of weight, and just like activate more. So maybe it like gets more.
This is not often thought about in the kind of standard fitness society. Everything's focused on the muscles or the cardiovascular system, but really partials, you're getting more on the tendons, the ligaments, and even the bone strength. Just holding 1,000 pounds over, in my case, over 5 times body weight, your body has to support that kind of thing, so that the bones get activated, and the bones are living tissue, right? Like these cells are being replaced. This is being made stronger. A lot of older people are worried about osteoporosis. Do some partials. Work into it smartly, but do some partials. You will not have osteoporosis, because the body's going to read that signal like, oh, we need to build stronger bones. It's going to make sure it absorbs what it needs from what you're eating, assuming you have the right sort of stuff in the diet for that. And then it's going to have stronger bones because of it.
Yeah, that can drive me crazy if I see like maybe like middle-aged women, and they're training with the same 8-pound dumbbells in the same class for years, and it's like,
it's not enough to trigger. I mean, any sort of weight training or weight bearing is important, but you need that heavy stimulation. And osteoporosis is also the hormonal aspect of it, but a lot of women aren't aware they also have testosterone, or even if they do know that, they're not aware of the importance of that. So that gets triggered by this sort of exercise, and that's going to, the testosterone as well as the estrogen is going to reinforce that the stronger bones as well.
Yeah, yeah. I work with someone. She's like 45, and then she started kind of with me about 3 years ago from like scratch. Never really worked out before, and then she got to be doing like she lost like 40 some pounds and had to have gained several pounds of muscle. And she got to where she was doing carries, deadlift, and carries with a trap bar with more than her body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And when she started with me, probably wasn't thinking that that was going to happen, but like little by little, and
Mm-hmm.
starting sometimes partials can't really do a full range with the good form, so short range, and then longer range, heavier weight, and then she's carrying 160 pounds across the room.
Yep.
And
I think the average person out there would be surprised at what they're capable of with just a little smart training and working on it. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to lift more than your body weight in a few different ways.
Yeah.
And they'll do a lot towards just keeping you healthier well into old age if you keep that up. I mean, it's really just use it or lose it, right? The corollary to that, I think, work on expanding it, and you'll keep on expanding it, right? It's not just about losing it, but you can keep getting better in different ways.
Yeah, it's cool to see a lot of people proving that now, like the trainers, like guys like Bud Jeffries, who I think he's at least like mid 40s or so, right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah, and getting stronger in ways and like doing
all the crazy stuff that Bud does.
Yeah,
he's just pure insanity. I love it.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's just another one of those guys. It's like, and people will like say stuff like he's like doing dumbbell rows with 300 pounds, and they'll say that his like technique is wrong or something. It's like you're telling one of the strongest guys on the planet that he's doing it wrong.
Yep.
Maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Well, I have to credit Bud for getting me into partials in the first place, along with much else. My work with them, I definitely learned a lot from the man over the years.
Who was the last one?
With Bud.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's it's awesome what he can do, and let's see. I guess I'm kind of like running out of questions for you. Did you? Is there anything else you're wanting to get into? I guess we've been on for.
I think we covered all the main stuff you usually talk about, and it's good. All the mental training, the herbs. I really like fitness people to kind of. For me, as I said, they were my secret weapons. They helped me to get to where I wanted to go. So I feel bringing that to light for more people. It may be small differences, but compounded over time, they can turn into huge differences. They certainly have for me, and I know they have for some other people as well. So I'd highly recommend investigating further into each of those fields.
Yeah, I noticed. I definitely noticed the difference when I take like the ginseng and the ashwagandha, and maybe I will look into your ashwagandha. I find that interesting, the tincture of it, and more local. I mean, I'm in Indiana.
And we shot a whole bunch of video and whatnot, so we'll be kind of showcasing the processing and the care that goes behind that. So I'm really excited about doing that, and this was kind of our first attempt with this, but we'll be doing much more of it in the future, and continuing to try to innovate and bring amazing stuff out to market. Yeah,
you're always. It's when people start looking at how many products you have, like the books and the DVDs and the herbs, and it's like you have a lot going on, and you've been doing this for a long time, and just keep doing more and more. And
I've been doing it long, been prolific, and really I mean, with all the books and the videos and whatnot, I do it first and foremost for myself. The best way to learn something is to teach it. So I experiment over time. I get some ideas and stuff I want to work on. Then it's like, okay, I'm going to put together a course, and I learn twice as much about the subject matter as I'm going through it again. And then, of course, it goes out there and helps benefit people too. So it's win-win. Yeah.
So how can people find your stuff?
Yeah. So legendarystrength.com. That's the main website for everything. Predominantly strength related, but also all the mental training stuff is there. Certainly a good amount on health and the hormones and everything too. Then for everything herb related, that is over at lostempireherbs.com. We also have very in-depth articles on hormones, on different aspects of health there. So there's a lot of information available for people that want to dive into it.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. I've really enjoyed and learned from your work for many years now. So it's cool to have you on. So you can have the last word. What do you want to leave people with?
Good question. I'd say just realize it's within. It always comes down to self-responsibility for everything. If you accept that self-responsibility, then it's up to you in order to change things. So whether that's fitness, whether that's health, whether that's business, whatever you're trying to do, recognize that. I mean, that's how I built myself from, I used to hate myself in high school and crazy dark period, but it was around that period where I realized, it's up to me. I can change things. I can begin to get built better. So if you have that commitment, that consistency, and you do things over time, it really starts to compound, and it can become truly awesome in the future.
Yeah, that makes that's really good. That makes a lot of sense. So thanks again for being on. I'm going to stop the recording, then I'll talk to you for a second when we're done recording.
All righty.